All right, so we got another update here from GGG about Path of Exile 2. Now, we've been having kind of back-to-back post updates, on what they believe the state of the game is, some things they're working on, and a lot of positive changes and buffs to basically direct player feedback. So today is no different. Actually, and today they're actually focusing on what probably is the largest, other than map area changes that we saw in the previous one, the other major feedback point would be like monster speed as well. So we're going to kind of break down what's going on here. So basically, they acknowledge that there has been many reports about being overwhelmed by monsters, and this is because of a variety of facts. And they have isolated what they believe is, they went case by case in each one of these mobs. Basically, they've isolated, they believe, some outliers in terms of like annoyance about mob speed. One of the first things they identified was that there's a lot of human monsters that were interrupting your attacks here. And they say humans in Act 3 have behavior where they can interrupt their melee attacks if players move too far out of range during the attack. So they basically removed this interaction, so you're not going to get as interrupted as often. So the need to go backwards because you're getting interrupted and you can't finish your attack has been gutted, so you should be able to feel less overwhelmed by these type of mods. They also added, and here's a good one, the haste aura monster modifier no longer appears on monsters that are already fast. This actually happened to me in the other day in maps. It was actually pretty hilarious. There's this guy who comes zipping off the side of the map like a blue bow of lightning, just boom, right on me. I couldn't even tell what kind of monster it was because he had a haste aura, and I guess it was a boar or a wolf or something that was already just way faster. He was right on my ass, and he was a mana siphoner. So this is actually a really nice change to just the random, absolutely terrifying mobs you see. There's a whole list here of Act 1 changes as well. It's kind of some cool changes too, because instead of just like we've lowered all monster speed by 15%, they actually kind of went case by case through the monsters. So like this is a good example. The werewolf prowlers and the tendril prowlers now enter a walking stance after performing a melee action. They'll only begin running again if you get a certain distance away from them. So if you stay within a certain pace, you can kind of, back guard there a little bit. This behavior has been applied to many fast monsters as well. The Hungering Stalkers now have 12% life and damage. They say they were already super fast, so they're just, lowering their life a little bit to account for their strength otherwise, and they are tended to engage and attack quickly but be weak and die fast. They reduce the number of Bloom Serpents in the Red Veil, halve the number of Venomous Crabs in the Hunting Grounds. These are the actual terrifying ones to shoot like the green little like Chaos Poison Beam. Those guys actually can hit you pretty hard, so that was a little scary. The Cultists of Freythorn no longer have interrupt attacks. You're gonna notice a lot of like interrupt event type of attacks are being removed. This is actually going to be significantly nicer for long cast animations. So if you're playing like Sunder Warrior or something, and you're like, going to attack and move, and you get hit by like a guy's like little peewee attack there, and it interrupts your whole thing. There's going to be a lot less of those, which was highly annoying. That should be nice for Warrior. The Cultists of Freythor wielding axes and maces now walk after performing a melee action, only running once again after you exit a certain distance. And if you know those like red blood pools that will go after some mobs after the blood cretins, this has been decreased from 6 seconds to 4 seconds, and to fix the area of effect to match the visual more closely. This is actually a nice change as well. And then if you look at this here, Ogham Manor. Ogham Manor has a lot of like stunning mobs, like difficult, it's fairly mobs, and they remove the overall density of the more challenging mobs in the manor. This is right before you get to Geonor. The annoying, like, roly-poly dudes in Act 2 have been replaced by Risen Marikeths. You're no longer having these, like, constantly annoying dudes shoving you all around in Act 2. And the Faradin have all been modified to remove the interrupt events on their attacks as described above. So there was just a lot of, like, annoying, like, you're going to attack and then you get stunned, and you got to attack and you get stunned again. So a lot of these have been gutted. The annoying roly-polies in Act 3 are more likely to push you aside instead of just like pushing you and dragging you all the way. This has been a complaint of mine for quite a while now. Actually, this has been complained about a bunch of people's for quite a while since the launch of the game, pretty much. The Lost City monster pack composition has been adjusted to result in less range monsters as well. Massively adjusted the Azeg Bog, firstly, by aforementioned changes to interrupt events. Good, but also changed the monster composition of the area to have less range and elite monsters as well. And they fixed an issue where the Slither, Spitters, Poison Spray, and Venom Crypts was dealing chaos damage instead of physical damage, so you'll be a little bit tankier against that. They also acknowledge there's an issue where sometimes mobs are just way denser than they actually mean for them to be while going through the campaign here. So they have identified this, but they can't get it within this patch. It's going to be in the next patch. They also acknowledge there are more things they want to do. However, this is what they were able to do pretty much immediately upon the consistent feedback here from the launch. So they're saying we're not done, but this is what we can ship now. It's nice to see some movement on these points in particular. I know this has been one that's kind of been like, debated by them and whether or not they actually want to go this way. But I believe these changes are for the better. And it is also nice to see they didn't just like gut numbers. Like, we're just going to cut speed by 25% and cut life by 25% and damage by 20, just make the mobs easier. Instead, they looked at every mob and it's like, what are some actions we can take to make the mob less annoying, but still kind of keep within the theme of it? And I think, removing the interrupt stuns is a big one, but also like the cool thing about, the werewolf will chase you, but if you're kind of close to him, he'll like walk towards you as opposed to like just chasing you down nonstop. You're also addressing some of the bosses. So in the campaign, Viper in Act 3, the lady that's got the square around her of all the guards there, or rectangle, I suppose. So lower the amount of Chaos Reigns, the purple ones, in the Viper fight, and cleaned up the visual left afterwards faster to make the following drop locations more obvious. So it's just going to be a little bit easier in one specific part of the Viper. The rest of the Viper fights remain the same. Even the fire first portion of that phase is remaining the same, but the giant purple ones are going to be a little bit easier to dodge here. Uxmo had various quirks that made him somewhat annoying to fight. We made a few changes, reduced the number of times Uxmo changes locations through the fight. He can no longer recharge energy shield while in the air and uses his flame breath less often. So you got the Chimera is going to be a little bit less annoying there. And the arena here for Exile, I forget the name, has had ground foliage removed in order to make his effects more visible. So again, all right, now we're going to get into player minion changes. So minions were not in a great state upon launch of this league, and they've also been kind of adding some patches back in to try to make minions a little bit better than they were, but minions remain pretty gutted from the previous patch. Now, if you look here, one of the biggest complaints about minion revive timers is if a minion dies, you have like this 7-second revive time. And then if another minion dies, it resets the minion revive time for all of them. So instead what they're doing here is they make it where each successive minion that dies increases it by less and less. So this way, your minions still are coming up at the same time because that's important, but you're not having to wait as long and having it be reset every time an additional minion dies. So this is basically a buff to minion respawn rate as well. Disenchanting and Bind Spectre Tame Beast Gem will unbuy them, allowing you to use them again, and Tame Beast can now fit through gaps the same size the player can, because sometimes if you have the big fat boy, he just wouldn't fit through. A couple other random changes here around player balance. One notable one here is Glory is no longer consumed if you're interrupted while using the skill. I like that they're focusing on interrupts in particular, because interrupts are one of the more annoying part about the game when you're fighting monsters. So if you go to like start your hammer and you get punched by one of the little mobs that you're talking about earlier and you go, it doesn't just make it go on cooldown. You have to get your glory again. So this is actually like a pretty nice fix, both for later on in the campaign, but particularly mapping as well. Here, rally support's no longer restricted to striker slams, can now support any melee attack you use yourself, and fix the bug where blood boils from the ritual ascendancy didn't propagate if the monsters explode on death, such as when using Herald of Blood. We have some additions and thoughts on crafting here. They finished adding all of the mods to runes for caster weapons. So casters didn't have sockets before, now they will. Desert, Glacial, Storm, Iron, Body, Mind, Rebirth, Inspiration, Stone, Vision runes all work on wands and staves with their own set of modifiers. Okay, so you got your own set of modifiers. Rinley's Abandoned Shop in the Burning Village now also has a blank rune, which Rinley can form into any elemental rune of your choosing in case you didn't find one up to that point. So this is another like smart change, because some of the complaints have been like you're not finding either a particular rune you want, or you're not finding artificial orbs as well. And they mentioned that here, 12 artificial orb drop locations fixed through the campaign have been added as well. So now you're going to have significantly more sockets on gear that you choose to have the sockets as you play through the campaign, which means you probably have to spend less gold on things like buying gear in the vendor that has sockets just so you can salvage it, which again will turn into you have more gold available for gambles, etc. So this is actually a nice addition as well. Some visual updates to performance here. And that is what is basically making it into the patch for today. And then they have some other charm changes, stash tabs, Atlas book, affinity changes, etc. that are going to be coming as well. So here's actually probably another quite big one. So the charm system is not what I would say feeling very impactful. This has kind of been a consistent point of feedback since the launch of the game. A great change that has been suggested and it looks like implemented now is that the charm slots are actually an implicit on the belt. So it's no longer actually going to take up a prefix of your belt to have more charms. It's just higher level belt, more total charm, slots, and you can re-roll that with the Divine Orb if you choose to try to get more charm sockets. So belts have one at 32, 2 at 64, and 3 from 65 and onwards. So now you're actually going to have access to more charms instead of just like you just put the stun one or just put the freeze one. You're going to actually, by the time you get to maps and push on, you're going to be able to put multiple charms in there. Unique belts will always have 3 charm slots. That's a nice addition. And for now, unique belts with mods that increase the number of charms will still be capped at 3. Later on, they will remove that cap. And then the changes to actual charms. Several charms were not protecting you from the hit that activated them. These cases have been fixed, and they've also done a pass on charm mods to make them more powerful and rewarding. So basically, this is just a pretty massive buff to charms in general. You're going to be adding more stash tab affinities, socketable fragments, breach, expedition, ritual, just to make stashing stuff a little bit easier. And then this is my most requested change. I've been asking for this since the launch of the game, having a way to bookmark Atlas. Basically have quality of life where you can put like, I want to save this one, I want to look at these types, etc. You can view a list of these. This is actually a nice quality of life change that's going to make it into the next patch as well. All in all, this is what I would consider a quality of life patch in improvements. They're trying to remove annoying things and add in things that will make the game smoother and more enjoyable to play. This isn't necessarily like giant rebalancing, but this is probably the point that I've heard the most complained about is interrupt stuns, monster speed. So that's nice to see. Overall, should increase the smoothness feeling of going through the campaign and into in-game. And there's a couple nice changes to some mob types in there that will make the mapping feel a little smoother as well. But that's just about it. I mean, they've kind of been back-to-back hitting us with these almost every single day. So we'll see if there's another post yet tomorrow. But for today, pretty good changes. That's about it. Love you all. See you on today's live stream.